I'm not on mute anymore.
Fantastic.
Nor am I.
Yeah.
I'm just going to do a talking head piece to you rather than showing you anything as wonderful as Dan's maps. And I'm really here to ask you a question, which is why has the most obvious solution to many of the problems which have been described by the previous speakers not been considered seriously in the UK? Imagine if you had some data that is widely available, that applies to everybody in the country, that could ensure that fire, police, ambulance could get to victims or people making a call immediately. Imagine if you could reduce air pollution in local areas because the last quarter mile dithering that everybody's used to in their cars would have a technical fix for it. Imagine if the amount of air pollution that you could get rid of. Think of all the lives that you could save. And we know you could save lives because certainly every few months a local newspaper has a story of the ambulance or fire engine that got lost, couldn't find a property, and as a result somebody died. And one of the things which I find staggering, because I've spoken to people who deal with the ambulance arrival statistics, because ambulance services have an 8-minute target for arriving at destinations. One of the things that is not recorded is how often ambulances fail to meet that because they cannot find the address to which they've been dispatched. So the key to all of this is address data. And it's address data that's geocoded down to individual buildings and to individual property parcels. Because on the whole, administrative boundaries do cross all sorts of other boundaries randomly. The problem with the postcodes has been very well described, and that's because postcodes are there for one purpose, administrative boundaries are there for another purpose. Wards should not split across local authority boundaries because they are electoral units for those authorities, but nevertheless, there are constant errors in this data. I'm a visiting professor at Liverpool University. I spent 30 years teaching GIS and running a GIS lab at Manchester University, which was then spun out into a company called Manchester Geomatics. And one of the things that we ran as our very first commercial project in Manchester Geomatics was something called the Joined Up Geography Testbed. And this was sponsored by about 10 national organisations, commercial organisations like Esri, the Office of Deputy Prime Minister, now at MHCLG, ONS, Ordnance Survey, Royal Mail. We got everybody with the core geographical data around the table to say, let's do some quality assurance. Let's see whether this data fits together. And what emerged from Joined Up Geography Testbed, it couldn't have been done in an academic setting, it could only be done in a commercial setting because it was all confidential to the organisations, was that we discovered an awful lot of dirty linen. The quality of the data sets was extraordinarily bad. That at ED level, ONS were failing to allocate addresses for sometimes a 10% error level. This didn't surprise us enormously. We've got Robert James in on this call today. Robert, some of you may know, was responsible in the post office for getting the postcode address file onto CD-ROM in the first place. And my lab in the university was one of the first customers for that. At that stage, a precursor to NHS Digital ran a directory of NHS points of interest, such as doctor's surgeries. So one of the first things we did was to check the doctor's surgeries address list against the postcode address file. 10% of the doctor's surgeries on the NHS list had postcodes that did not match those that Royal Mail reckoned they ought to have. And those errors are absolutely constant. We completed the Joined Up Geography Testbed project. We demonstrated to Ordnance Survey that Address Point, their key geocoding product for addresses, was faulty. They started off by calling us charlatans, by saying we'd taken their money and told them a load of nonsense. This couldn't possibly be true. They came back 2 weeks later and apologized to us, and they said, it's not just bad, it's worse than you told us it was. Of course, this is all very trivial. Now you've told us, we know exactly how to sort it, but we haven't got the resource at the moment. Would you sort it? And it took a lot of sorting. Unfortunately, somehow Ordnance Survey managed to forget that sorting, because 10 years afterwards, at a presentation where the ODI were present, the address manager of Ordnance Survey very proudly said, "Oh, we've just sorted geolocating our address points because they were really bad." But it had been sorted 10 years before. They threw away the results, and then they had to rediscover that wheel. All of this came to a head in 2001, when the 2001 census was based crazily. Now, no one can imagine why anyone would do this. The 2001 census was based not on path, as was stated. It was based on 1999 address point. And the idea was that enumerators were going to fill in the details afterwards. They were going to be able to find properties. Lo and behold, 2002 November, Manchester City Council were going to be clients of ours for a part of the joined up geography testbed project, and they rang me up and they said, "Bob, you know we were going to sponsor joined up geography testbed project. Well, we've got a much more urgent problem. We've just had our census results. The census says that our population dropped by 40,000. It can't be true. Council tax hasn't gone down, number of patrons registered GPs hasn't gone down, pupils in schools haven't gone down, but we've spoken to the national statistician. He says this is the most accurate census ever. It's the only census that's ever been double-checked by a ground survey. You're wrong, we're right." So Manchester said, "Well, what if we got an independent audit of our results?" And because they were talking to us already, they came to us and they said, "Will you do an audit of our address evidence to present to ONS?" And we were extremely fortunate, because at that stage, John Fullinger, who became national statistician, had been made director of the census. And he said to Manchester, "Well, we probably won't take any notice because we know we're right. But just out of interest, who do you use?" And they said, "Manchester Geomatics." And they said, "Never heard of them." And he said, "Bob Parr's outfit out of the university." And he said, "Well, if it's Bob Parr's outfit, I happen to know John Fullinger from 10 years previously, when we'd both worked on the social exclusion unit, and we'd worked on the Better Information Policy Action Team, which had led to neighbourhood stats. He won his battle over neighbourhood stats, and I helped with that. It won a battle to improve the index of multiple deprivation enormously with the Oxford team, but I lost my battle over making sure that we should be doing all our georeferencing at individual address level. And ONS, and the Geography Division ONS, said, "No, we're entirely happy with doing it at postcode level." And that led to continuing problems. The end result of the 2001 census work was that we were able to demonstrate to the satisfaction of ONS and the Statistics Authority and a whole raft of peer reviewers that ONS got it badly wrong. And the places like Manchester have been under-enumerated very significantly, perhaps not quite by 40,000, but very significantly. The end result was that Manchester had its population estimate changed, which generated £10 million a year over a 10-year period, £100 million for Manchester, £2 million a year for the clinical commissioning groups, 20 million over a 10-year period. So this addressing stuff really matters. My puzzle now, and what I'm asking for help from all of you, is I know that the ODI knows this is really important. I know that the ODI went and spent a lot of money trying to produce an independent open address register, and in the end had to throw in the towel, as has everybody else who's had to create an open address register, because of the legal impediments. And the legal impediments are there because Royal Mail and Ordnance Survey want to keep a bait and hook commercial model. And the reason this is important now is we're going to be told that everything's going to be fine because UPRN is going to be open, and there will be a cheap address product from the 1st of July, which is going to be address-based core. And my view is that simply is still not the right answer. An open national address register is the only right answer. And a question that I keep asking, both as a politician, I lead Liberal Democrats in Warrington Borough Council, and as an academic, is how did we arrive at these decisions? And we don't know. That part of advice from ministers is secret. I have some fair ideas. I've got some suppositions which are in the PowerPoint presentation that you're very welcome to download on the great data robbery. But we must carry on asking that question, and we must particularly keep challenging the Geospatial Commission as to why they are sticking to a model, particularly now that they've funded Ordnance Survey over a 10-year period to the tune of about £1 billion, which would be enough to make Ordnance Survey into a fully open data organisation. Yet they are determined to make it a bait and hook commercial organisation and keep it as such. And we need to keep challenging that. Only that way we'll be able to improve our data at individual atomic unit level, and those atomic units are addresses, and UPRN is not an adequate substitute. Thanks for listening.